My name is Mara Quinn, and I'm 29 years old. People often say family is forever, but in mine, forever always felt like a sentence. I was the youngest of three sisters, Terry, the calm middle one everyone liked, and Elena, the eldest, the golden child, whose smile could light up a room and whose temper could burn it down. Ever since I can remember, Elena made it her mission to remind me that I didn't belong. When I was little, she used to tell me that Mom and Dad hadn't planned for me, that I was a bonus accident. I used to laugh it off, but the older I got, the more her words stung. In school, she called me Cruella for my dark makeup and punk style. I thought I was expressing myself. She thought I was a joke. She'd smirk at my friends, whispering things about how Mara's just going through her weird phase. Once she pushed me down the hallway so hard my notebook spilled open in front of everyone. The whole class laughed. She just stood there, smiling, basking in the attention. Our parents saw it all, but instead of stopping her, they told me, "She's your sister Mara. She just gets jealous sometimes. Try to understand." Understand what? That her cruelty was a cry for help. Or that my pain didn't matter because she was the favorite. When Elena moved out at 19, after landing her first job, I remember thinking I could finally breathe. For a few years, I lived in peace, just me and Terry, who always treated me like an equal. Terry was the kind of sister everyone wished they had. She'd braid my hair before school dances, sneak me her clothes, and tell me I looked beautiful when I didn't believe it myself. But even freedom from Elena was never permanent. She'd visit for holidays, sweeping into our parents' house with stories about her new apartment, her boyfriend, her life. And with every visit came her sharp little reminders that she was still the successful one. She'd tell me, "Don't take it personally, Mara, not everyone's meant to shine." Then she got married to Gary, and for a while she seemed content. Terry and I hoped that maybe love would mellow her out. I wanted to believe it too. When I turned 20, I started daydreaming about my 21st birthday. In our family, turning 21 was a milestone. Both my sisters had thrown big parties, the kind where relatives came bearing gifts, and our parents made long speeches. I wanted that too. I wanted one day that was just mine. A week before my birthday, Terry called me sounding both excited and hesitant. "Elena's pregnant," she said. I froze. My first thought wasn't even joy, it was dread. Because I knew what was coming. And sure enough, it did. At my party, everyone was laughing, eating, dancing. I was cutting the cake when Elena walked in wearing a white shirt that said "New Mommy" in glittering gold letters. The room went quiet, then erupted in cheers. "Oh my God, Elena's pregnant," someone shouted. Cameras turned toward her. People hugged her. She was glowing like she'd planned the whole thing. I tried to smile, but it felt fake on my face. When I congratulated her, she didn't even look at me. Just kept talking to our relatives about baby names, about cravings, about nursery colors. No one remembered the cake. No one sang to me. Terry caught my eye from across the room. She looked just as hurt for me as I felt for myself. I excused myself, quietly, walked out into the cold night, and cried on the porch. Mom and Dad found me later and scolded me for leaving my own party. "You should be happy for her," they said. "It's not always about you, Mara." Not always about me. That line echoed in my head for years. Because with Elena, nothing was ever about me. Not my birthdays, not my successes, not my happiness. She always found a way to steal the spotlight, and the one time I asked for it, I was called selfish. After that night, I stopped inviting Elena to anything. No birthdays, no dinners, no milestones. Terry stayed by my side, but even she couldn't shield me from the ache of being constantly overshadowed. For a while, I thought distance would heal everything. But pain has a strange way of finding you even when you think you've left it behind. Because years later, when I finally thought my life was safe from Elena's chaos, she found a new way to destroy it. Not my birthday this time, something much bigger. Something white, fragile, and worth every piece of my heart. It's strange how happiness can make you reckless, how it blinds you into believing that old wounds can't reopen. When Paul proposed, I truly thought I had left the past behind. Paul wasn't like anyone I'd dated before. He was gentle, thoughtful, the kind of man who never raised his voice. We'd spent years saving for the wedding we both wanted, simple, elegant hours. When I told Terry the news, she squealed and hugged me so tightly I almost cried. But when my parents found out, my mom's first words weren't congratulations. They were, "So have you told Elena yet?" I hadn't, and honestly, I didn't plan to. I tried to explain that Elena and I weren't close, that I didn't want any more chaos. But Mom's face fell in that familiar guilt-tripping way. "Mara, she's your sister," she said softly. "If she's not there, what will people think?" Dad was quieter. He didn't push me, but I could see the same worry in his eyes, not about me, but about what others would say. So I caved. I told them fine, Elena could come as long as she behaved. Terry helped me shop for my wedding dress. I wanted something timeless but special. I remember stepping out of the fitting room and seeing her gasp. "Mara," she whispered, "you look like someone out of a dream." The dress was everything I'd imagined: ivory silk with delicate beading that shimmered like frost in sunlight. It wasn't extravagant, but it made me feel seen, like for once I could be the center of something beautiful. I couldn't afford a professional alteration, so my aunt, a retired seamstress who adored me, offered to do it. "You can trust me, sweetheart," she said, patting my hand. "No one will touch this dress but me." When I dropped it off, I told her in a half-joking, half-serious voice, "Please don't show it to anyone, not even Mom." She smiled. Cross my heart. A week passed, then another. No call. I tried phoning her, nothing. Terry suggested we drive to her place just to check in. When my aunt opened the door, her eyes were red, her lips trembling. "Oh, Mara, I'm so sorry." My stomach tightened. Sorry for what? She led us into her sewing room. And there it was, my wedding dress, torn clean down the middle. Beads scattered across the floor like broken glass. The bodice shredded, the skirt ripped in jagged strips. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then the air left my lungs. What happened?" I whispered. My aunt broke down crying. "It was an accident," she said between sobs. "Elena came by a few days ago. She brought her dogs. I told her I was working on your dress. And while I stepped out to make her tea, one of the dogs must have—" I didn't even let her finish. "Dogs," I repeated, my voice shaking. "Dogs tore my dress like this." Terry crouched beside the pile of fabric, touching the frayed edge. "This isn't an accident, Auntie," she said quietly. "These aren't claw marks. It's cut. Torn." My aunt looked away. "I locked the door," she whispered. "I swear I locked it. But when I came back, the door was open." That's when it hit me. The only person who could have opened it was Elena. Something inside me went cold. Years of swallowed anger surged to the surface. "She wanted this," I said through clenched teeth. She couldn't stand the idea of me being happy. We left my aunt sobbing, but I couldn't feel anything anymore. I was beyond tears. That night, I told my parents. Dad offered to buy me another dress. Mom insisted it was an honest mistake, that I was overreacting. "You can't blame her for what a dog did," she said. I could almost laugh, because in my family, Elena was always innocent. But Terry didn't let it go. "No," she said firmly. "We're confronting her." The next day, we arranged to meet at our parents' house. Elena arrived in her usual fashion, smiling, pretending nothing was wrong. So she chirped wedding plans. I didn't waste a second. "My dress was destroyed," I said flatly. "By your dog, or by you." Her smile froze. "What are you talking about?" "Our aunt told us you were there," Terry added. "The door was locked, Elena, until you showed up." Elena's face flushed. "You're insane," she snapped. "Why would I ruin your stupid dress?" I leaned forward. "Funny. You said you didn't even like my dress. So what?" she shot back. "I never showed it to you," I said quietly. Her mouth opened, then closed. Silence fell. Dad's voice broke through it. "Elena, did you do this?" She tried to deny it again, but her hands trembled. Tears welled up. "I didn't mean to," she said finally. I wanted to see it, okay? I thought maybe if I looked, I'd feel better. But when the dog got in," I cut her off. "You left the door open on purpose." Her tears spilled over. "You always get everything, Mara. Everyone feels sorry for you, the poor youngest sister. I just wanted one thing that was mine." Mom gasped. Dad's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen. "You should be ashamed," he said quietly. For the first time, he didn't defend her. I told her she owed me $800, the cost of the dress she'd destroyed. She said she didn't have it. I told her I'd take her to court if I had to. Mom begged me to let it go, but I was done being her scapegoat. In the end, Elena scraped together $500 and called it even. "You should forgive me," she said tearfully. "We're family." I stared right at her. "That's exactly why I can't." She stormed out. Mom cried. Dad sat silently. And Terry squeezed my hand, whispering, "You did the right thing." That night, I tucked the ruined fabric into a box and shoved it to the back of my closet. I told myself that once the wedding was over, I'd never think about Elena again. I should have known better, because people like her don't disappear, they wait. They wait for you to heal, so they can break you all over again. Years passed. The wedding came and went, beautiful in its own way, though not the dream I'd envisioned. Dad paid for a new gown, and I walked down the aisle in something different. But even as I smiled for the cameras, a small part of me mourned what could have been. Elena wasn't there, and for a while that absence felt like peace. Terry stood beside me as my maid of honor, whispering, "This day is yours finally." And it was, for a moment. After that, life became steady. Paul and I built a quiet little home, cozy, warm, full of laughter. I thought the chaos was over. I thought I'd learned that peace was something you had to choose and protect. Then one day I found out I was pregnant. Pregnancies does strange things to your emotions. I remember sitting in the doctor's office, hearing the faint heartbeat and bursting into tears, not from fear or joy, but from something deeper. Hope. A fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, I could start a new chapter where my child would never know what it felt like to be unloved inside their own family. When my parents heard the news, they were ecstatic. But Mom's excitement quickly shifted, as it always did to Elena. "You should tell your sister," she said. "She'll be so happy for you." I scoffed. "Will she?" Mom sighed. "It's been years, Mara. People change." I wanted to believe that, but the memory of shredded silk and spilled beads still lived behind my eyelids, so I didn't reach out. Months later, when my son was born, something inside me softened. Paul was in the delivery room holding my hand as I screamed through contractions. When I finally held our baby, tiny, warm, perfect, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Every ounce of pain I'd ever carried seemed to dissolve into the air. When we got home, my parents came over. Mom held my son like he was made of porcelain and said through tears, "You and Elena should reconnect. You're both mothers now. It's time to let the past go." I didn't answer. But later that night, when I was feeding my baby, my phone buzzed. "Elena, congratulations. He's beautiful." For a moment, I just stared at the screen. I hadn't heard her voice in years. Against my better judgment, I called her. She sounded surprised and nervous. "I didn't think you'd pick up," she said softly. "I almost didn't," I replied. There was a pause, then her voice broke. "Mara, I've been going to therapy. I know I hurt you. I was jealous and I hated myself for it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm sorry." Her words hit something in me. She didn't sound like the same woman who had torn my life apart. She sounded human. Motherhood changes people, I thought. Maybe it changed her too. I told her I can't forget what happened, but I'm willing to try again for the kids. She sobbed with relief. "Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." And just like that, the walls I'd built started to crack. Over the next few months, Elena began showing up cautiously at first. She brought small gifts for my son, offered to babysit, even stayed up with me once during a long, colicky night. She seemed different, gentler, thoughtful. Terry didn't trust it. "She's playing nice now," she warned. "But it won't last. Elena doesn't change, she just hides." I wanted to believe she was wrong. Because there were good moments too. Family dinners that didn't end in tears. Elena laughing as my son toddled around her living room. Her telling me, "You're such a good mom, Mara. I wish I'd had your patience." But every now and then there were cracks. Little comments easily missed but impossible to forget. Like when she said, "He's such a spoiled baby. Everyone dotes on him. I bet mine never got that much attention." Or, "You're lucky Paul helps. Gary's too busy, but I guess not everyone can have a perfect husband." Small jabs wrapped in sugar. Still, I ignored them, because I wanted this to work. I wanted to believe that families could heal. Then, as my son's first birthday approached, I invited everyone, even Elena. I spent weeks planning the perfect little party, a soft blue theme, animal cupcakes, fairy lights twinkling in the garden. Paul built a handmade photo board of our son's first year, and I felt proud of the life we'd built. The night before the party, Elena texted, "Can't wait for tomorrow. I have something special to share too." I remember smiling, thinking she meant a gift. But deep down, somewhere beneath all the forgiveness and wishful thinking, something inside me stirred uneasily. A voice I'd spent years silencing whispered, "Be careful, Mara. You know how she works." I brushed it off. Because people change, right? And I told myself this time everything would be different. The morning of my son's first birthday was pure joy. The house smelled like vanilla frosting, and balloons squeaked against the ceiling. My husband Paul was in the kitchen, half laughing, half complaining about how the cupcakes were too cute to eat. Terry came early, helping me hang the last banner, "Wonderful Year." Everything felt perfect. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how new beginnings look. Elena arrived late, of course, but for once I didn't mind. She walked in wearing a bright coral dress and a huge grin, carrying a wrapped present. "Sorry traffic was awful," she said cheerfully, handing me the gift. "Don't worry," I smiled, genuinely happy. "You made it." For the first hour, it was wonderful. The kids played on the lawn. My parents chatted with Paul's family. Terry was chasing my son around, making him giggle so hard he hiccuped. Elena mingled easily. She even helped refill drinks. When it was finally time to bring out the cake, I felt a lump in my throat. My baby was turning 1. After all the pain, after all the years of chaos, this moment felt like healing. Everyone gathered around, singing happy birthday. Paul held our son. I stood beside them, my cheeks aching from smiling. Cameras flashed. Laughter filled the air. "And then, sorry, everyone!" Elena's voice suddenly boomed over the speakers. I turned. She was holding the DJ's microphone. Before I could process what was happening, she beamed and announced, "I have some wonderful news to share." The crowd fell silent. My stomach dropped. She placed a hand on her belly and said, "Gary and I are expecting again." Applause erupted. My mother gasped, clapping her hands to her mouth. "Oh, Elena, that's wonderful." I stood frozen. The air around me seemed to thin like the walls were closing in. Just like that, my son's birthday had turned into her celebration. I felt the old ache rise in my chest, raw and familiar. My 21st birthday flashed before my eyes. The same laughter, the same faces, the same humiliation. Elena waved dramatically, soaking in every bit of attention. Then, as if she hadn't humiliated me enough, she walked right up to me, smiling. "Mara," she said sweetly, "you've always been so supportive. I know you'll help me plan the best baby shower ever." And then she handed me an envelope. I stared at it. My hands were trembling as I opened it. Inside was a detailed baby shower checklist. Venue ideas, catering preferences, color themes, and at the bottom, in her looping handwriting, "Hosted by Mara." Something inside me snapped. I heard laughter, clinking glasses, my son starting to fuss, but all of it felt muffled far away. Years of swallowed rage churned through me. All the nights I'd cried because of her, all the times I'd been told to be the bigger person. Not this time. I looked at the list one last time, then tore it clean down the middle. The sound sliced through the room like thunder. Gasps. Silence. The only thing I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Elena's smile faltered. For the first time, she looked stunned, like she hadn't expected me to fight back. "Mara," she shrieked. "What the hell are you doing?" I held up the torn papers. "This is my son's birthday, not your stage." Her eyes filled with tears instantly, that practiced look of wounded innocence. "I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this in front of everyone." I almost laughed. Humiliate her. Paul was frozen beside me, holding our son, eyes darting between us. My mom rushed over, grabbing Elena's hand. "Sweetheart, don't cry. She didn't mean it." "Elena," my father's voice cut sharply through the tension, "that's enough." But Elena wasn't finished. "You've always hated me, haven't you?" she said, tears streaking her face. "You can't stand it when something good happens to me." Terry stepped in. "You just hijacked your nephew's birthday, Elena. Again. What part of that is good?" Elena turned on her. "Oh, so you're taking her side now, you always do." I felt my son whimpering in Paul's arms. The guests were shifting uncomfortably, whispering. The candles on the cake flickered, forgotten. Paul leaned toward me, whispering through gritted teeth, "Please, Mara. Not here. Just let it go." But I couldn't, not anymore. I met Elena's gaze and said quietly but firmly, "You've taken everything from me. My birthdays, my wedding, my peace. But you're not taking my son's joy too." For a moment her face hardened, then she broke down, crying loud and messy. "You're cruel," she sobbed. "You ruined my announcement." The irony almost made me dizzy. My dad finally stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Gary, take her home. Now." Her husband, who had been hovering awkwardly in the background, muttered a quiet apology to everyone and guided her toward the door. My mother tried to follow, but Terry caught her wrist and said sharply, "No, let her go." The moment Elena left, the air felt lighter, but the damage was done. People tried to go back to the cake, but the laughter was forced. My son started crying from all the noise. Paul blew out the candles himself and whispered, "Happy birthday, buddy," before handing him to me. That night, after everyone left the house, felt hollow. Decorations drooped. Frosting dried on plates. Paul stood by the sink, silent, jaw tight. When I tried to speak, he finally said, "You could have waited. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." "She humiliated me again," I said, my voice cracking. "What was I supposed to do? Smile and clap?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I just wanted today to be peaceful. For him." That hit hard, because I did too. But sometimes peace isn't quiet. Sometimes it's standing in the middle of a storm and saying, "Not this time." Still, as I tucked my son into bed that night, watching his tiny chest rise and fall, I couldn't shake the question Paul had left hanging in the air. Had I really stood up for myself, or had I become just like her? The silence between Paul and me stretched into days. It wasn't angry silence, just heavy. The kind that fills every room, pressing down on you until breathing feels like work. He went back to his usual calm routine, but I could feel him pulling away quietly disappointed. Every time I looked at him holding our son, I wondered if he saw me differently now, as the woman who'd ruined her child's birthday with family drama. Finally, one night, after putting our baby to sleep, I said, "We need to talk." Paul nodded, leaning against the counter. His voice was low. "I just don't understand, Mara. I've never seen you like that before." I swallowed hard. "You've never seen me push that far before." And then it all came pouring out, 29 years of memories I'd buried to keep the peace. The bullying, the mockery, the destroyed dress. The way Elena turned every happy moment into her stage. I told him everything. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling. Paul stood there in stunned silence. Then he whispered, "You told me she ruined your wedding dress, but I didn't realize it went that deep. I thought maybe it was a one-time thing." I shook my head. "It's never been one time. It's been my whole life." He reached out, brushing my cheek. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I shouldn't have judged you that night. I wanted our son's birthday to be perfect." "I did too," I whispered, but she left me no choice. He sighed, his shoulders sinking. "Maybe it's time to make sure she never gets another chance." That's when I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protection. Not just for me, but for our son. The next morning, while Paul fed the baby, I sat down with my phone and scrolled through Elena's unread messages, 23 of them. "I can't believe you'd do that to me. You ruined my moment. We're family. How could you embarrass me like that?" Not one word of apology, not one shred of accountability. I didn't reply. I deleted them all. Then I called my parents. Dad answered first. "Hi, sweetheart," he said cautiously. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said. "But I need to tell you something. Paul and I are cutting Elena off. For good." There was a pause. "Honestly," Dad said, "I can't blame you." I almost cried from relief, but then Mom's voice cut in on speakerphone. "Mara, no. That's too extreme. She's your sister." "She's a problem," I snapped before I could stop myself. "And I'm done pretending she's not." "She's pregnant," Mom protested. "You can't just abandon her. Families forgive." I clenched my fists. "She's not my responsibility, Mom. And forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone destroy you over and over again." "You're being cruel," she said quietly. Something inside me broke then. Years of quiet resentment rose to the surface, sharp and unstoppable. "Cruel," I said, my voice shaking. "You watched her bully me for years and called it sisterly jealousy. You let her ruin my birthday, my wedding, my peace. And you said nothing. You've spent your entire life protecting her feelings, but never once protected mine." "Mara, that's not true." "It is. I cut her off. You raised a golden child and a scapegoat, and I got tired of playing my part." She started crying softly on the other end of the line. "I just want my daughters to love each other." "You wanted peace," I said coldly. "But peace built on silence isn't love, Mom. It's control." Dad finally spoke. "Mara's right," he said, his voice firm but sad. "Elena crossed too many lines. She needs to live with the consequences." For once I felt seen. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet, the weight of it all settling around me. Terry texted not long after. "Terry, you okay, me? Yeah? Finally am? Terry." "Then let her go. For good this time." So I did. I blocked Elena's number, her social media, her husband, everything. But peace doesn't come easy after years of chaos. That night, I dreamed of my mother crying, of Elena's face twisting with anger, of my younger self hiding behind a locked door. When I woke up, the house was quiet except for the soft hum of the baby monitor. Paul was asleep beside me, his arm draped protectively over our son's blanket. For the first time in years, I realized that I didn't owe anyone forgiveness. I owed my family safety and myself freedom. I whispered into the dark, "No more, Elena. You don't get to write my story anymore." And for once, I believed it. The days after cutting Elena off felt eerily calm, like standing in a house after a storm and realizing the roof finally held. No more messages, no more guilt, just quiet. Terry and I grew closer than ever. We met for coffee every week, sometimes talking about childhood, sometimes pretending it never happened. There was an unspoken agreement between us. We'd survived the same fire, and we didn't need to reopen the ashes to prove it. But Mom couldn't let it go. She called often, her voice small and tired. Mara, she'd say, your sister keeps asking if she can talk to you. She's really sorry this time. I didn't even ask which this time she meant. There had been too many. Mom, I said one afternoon, if she were truly sorry, she'd respect my silence. Mom sniffled. You can't stay angry forever. You'll regret it when I'm gone. That one landed harder than I wanted it to. But instead of arguing, I said quietly, maybe. But I'll regret it more if my son grows up thinking this kind of behavior is normal. She didn't answer. For once, she didn't know what to say. Weeks turned into months. My parents visited just Dad at first, then eventually Mom, too quieter than before. She still sent pictures of Elena's new baby as if dangling bait. I didn't respond. And yet, despite all the bitterness, there were moments when I caught myself wondering, did she name the baby yet? Was it a boy or girl? But every time those thoughts came, I remembered standing at my son's birthday watching her smile with that same performative glow, the same one from my 21st, my wedding. And the ache hardened back into resolve. Because some people don't change. They just learn new ways to hide their cruelty behind tears. Therapy helped me understand that. My therapist, a calm woman with kind eyes, said something during our second session that stuck with me. Forgiveness doesn't mean reopening the door. Sometimes it's just dropping the key and walking away. So I walked away. And in that silence, something unexpected bloomed peace. Not the fragile, performative peace my mother begged for, but real peace. The kind that lives in the quiet of a baby's laugh in Paul's arms around me, at night, in mornings when sunlight spills across the floor and nothing hurts anymore. When I saw Elena again months later at a distant cousin's wedding, she tried to make eye contact across the table. Her smile was small, unsure, almost pleading. I looked right through her. Terry leaned over and whispered, "You good?" I smiled. Better than ever. Elena didn't approach me after that. Maybe she finally understood that I wasn't playing her game anymore, that she couldn't steal attention if no one was watching. Later that night, as Paul and I drove home, the city lights flickering past, I thought about how much time I'd lost trying to fix someone who didn't want to be fixed. I thought about my son growing up one day and asking Mom, why don't I have an Aunt Elena? And I knew exactly what I'd tell him. That sometimes love means keeping your distance, because not everyone who shares your blood deserves a place in your peace. I looked out the window, my reflection overlapping with the blur of lights, a woman who'd finally stopped chasing approval and started protecting herself. For the first time in my life, my story wasn't about survival, it was about freedom. And freedom, I learned, doesn't need an audience. It just needs silence. Because in that silence, I finally heard the one voice that had been drowned out my entire life, my own. Some people apologized with tears, I whispered, watching the night stretch ahead. Others with change. Elena only had the first kind. I've stopped waiting for the second. I smiled softly, reaching for Paul's hand as our son slept peacefully in the back seat. For once, I thought my life isn't about her. And that more than anything felt like the happiest ending I could ever ask for.